My name is Mark Pizik. I am at the Getty Research Institute. I want to welcome you to the second of two wonderful talks that we have in this time block. This one is entitled Discovery and Linked Data, Opportunities and Questions. We have two incredible presenters who will be leading us in this talk presentation today. The first is Astrid Usong. She is a user experience designer at Stanford Libraries. She works in digital library systems and services, creating simple and engaging interfaces for library patrons and staff. Recent projects of hers include the self-deposit application for the digital repository and archival collections at the Stanford website. Before Stanford, she worked in financial services for 20 years. The second speaker is Huda Khan. She's a software developer at Stanford Libraries. She works as part of the digital library systems and services. She's been working in library technology for 15 years, has participated in researching and prototyping library discovery systems using linked data as part of linked data for production, pathways to implementation, and linked data for production, closing the loop grants. So thank you so much for your time today. We're really looking forward to hearing more from you. I'm going to get out of the way and let our presenters talk the audience through how they're going to present, etc. If you have questions, feel free to drop them into chat. We will be monitoring them and we'll present them to the speakers at opportune moments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and sorry for giving you a mouthful with like two different grants that have the same exact beginning, but just different words at the end. I was joking with Astrid yesterday that me saying I've been in library technology for 15 years was just a summary way of saying that I'm really old now. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to share my screen. We shared the notes and slides links in the chat, and I think Jessica also did that, so thank you, Jessica. But let's just go ahead and start. And just to let you know, we've historically always been a very informal kind of group. So if you do have questions or things you would like to ask, please feel free to do so during the presentation. We also have time for discussion and questions that we've built into this session. So again, thank you all for being here. Just to kind of give you an overview of what we'll be doing in the session. First, we'll go over what the Discovery Affinity Group is and a little bit of its history and its charter and purpose. Then we're going to start talking about different examples around linked data and discovery. The reason for that is because we want to set some context before we launch into our discussion question, which was also in the overview on the sketch site, is that with the work that's going on right now, moving cataloging towards the use of linked data and using more linked data, what does all this change in how we represent information and connect information mean for discovery? What could it mean and what could possible directions be? So in order to help us think about that question, we're going to do a little bit of a recap of examples that we know of right now, and then have some more discussion. So if you go to this link, that's our wiki for discovery for this group. It has links to our agenda and notes. And to kind of go way back to when we were founded and what this group is about, it's to support community input, retrieval of community input, and encouraging discussion on a variety of topics. Around this question of if we have linked data and are using it, how can that use of linked data, integration of linked data, enhance discovery? And what does it mean to enhance discovery? Just a few logistical notes. I checked yesterday, we have 454 members on Slack. And I think the links to the Slack are in the main LD4 workspace, which you are probably already a part of if you are attending this conference. The email list had 58 members, and I will note the slides also have speaker notes with links in them, so I will refer to those at times, but feel free to check the speaker notes out as well. And then, of course, the link to our agenda. And to just sort of make sure everybody knows this, because this question has come up in the past, this is a group that is open to everybody. So it doesn't matter if your institution was or was not part of any previous grant work around linked data, or wherever they're at with that. If you're interested in this topic, we will welcome you and welcome your ideas and input. Um, so we're just going to go to the next one. So like I said, the first time we met was in 2019, which is now seems like an age and a half ago. And we've had, mostly met every other week. We have been taking summers off for the past few years, and of course, cancellations happen. But we, like I said, a very informal group. We encourage discussion. We've had various demonstrations from people that we've invited, presentations. Um, we love a good crossover episode, as we like them, with the Wikidata Affinity Group and LD4 Art and Design specifically. We've done that with them. And we try to capture our discussions in meeting notes and recordings, but we've also worked on specific, almost like projects, where when we started out, the affinity group, the LD4P, P2, P3, who knows, all those grants were underway, and so discovery was a big part of those grants. So we would use the affinity group as a means of exploring those ideas and having those discussions. The LD4 conference sessions, we sometimes discussed what we thought, what we learned from them there. We also, as a group, collectively authored a paper called the Knowledge Panel White Paper. And the link is on the GitHub wiki, where it's sort of like a recipe for what you should think about and what you should consider if you wanted to implement a knowledge panel in your own library catalog or in your own system. Many years ago, we had what we called the Lord of the Rings data spreadsheet, one spreadsheet to rule them all, where we looked through various metadata properties and how they all connect together. And this year, we included a link to a spreadsheet, which was sort of community curated around discovery systems that use linked data in some capacity, and then in what capacity do they use them. So I would encourage you definitely to check out the spreadsheet, and if you have suggestions and questions around that, to reach out to us. There's a link on this slide too for the spreadsheet, because it has various examples around linked data and discovery. So now we're going to launch into different examples. And again, the objective of going through these examples is not just to show you the kinds of things we've talked about at the Affinity Group, although that is one way of thinking about it, but also to help you, the participants in this, sort of reflect on these various examples and think about what you think works well, where you might want to see additional work, or if there is some completely new approach or new idea that you can think of as we're talking through this, where you believe that would be a good direction to explore work in this area of how to support discovery using linked data. So the three main categories that we will talk about and provide at least some examples for are how various systems have used linked data in a contextual capacity, so adding context to the content that they already have. How some systems use linked data as the main representation layer or as part of their representation layer. So the discovery system is layered on top of that model, and the model is what really drives all of the search and results. And since AI is top of our minds, and for many different reasons, with all the generative AI and large language model discussions, some of which have happened at this conference as well, we'll talk a little bit about knowledge graphs as sources of AI discovery paths, or sort of where the intersection might lie. And I'll note that this third bullet is kind of sparse. We put in a few examples, but we're hoping that you might think of more and have more to add there. Does anyone have any questions before we start? You can use the chat, or quite frankly, just chime in. Okay. Well, we'll keep going, but feel free to ask if you have any questions. So going through these examples, and again, as we go through them, please think about what resonates with you and where you think we could go next. So the first category is linked data as an additive, like linked data providing additional knowledge to content that already exists. And and identifiers are important throughout, but really one of the main mechanisms to try to get additional context into your system is ensuring that you have the identifiers in place or can find the identifiers that link between the content you do have and the content that exists in other linked data sources. And so Wikidata is, one of our sort of most successful, I think, linked data projects or linked data communities. And that is often, that will show up in a lot of the examples that I talk about as a way of getting information. And really identifiers are the key there to get that. As far as the way that that's implemented, it could be implemented in different ways. There's the on-demand approach, which basically means that if I, as a user, come into the system and I click on something or I do, I interact with the interface in some way, that at that point in time, the queries or the request for that information from the other linked data sources will be made when I need it as the user. It's possible that some systems also store and cache the information instead of relying on real-time queries, but I think real-time queries are probably, especially for these kind of context adding kind of mechanisms, pretty normal. An important aspect to think about if people are trying to add information contextually is also when not to display information. And I'll talk a little bit about what I mean about that and why that's important when I go through the examples. And as people put these systems together, design these systems, there are many questions they would address, but two main ones are what information are we getting from these external linked data sources that are even relevant for users and useful for them? And so what do we want to grab? And also, how do we represent this information in the interface that does not hinder what users are already trying to do, doesn't get in their way, doesn't overwhelm them? So those are some of the questions that people have had in mind as they've, or should have in mind as they're working on this. So here's some examples. Again, there are links in the slides, but this is an example from Cornell University Library. In this example, if you go to, actually, I think I'll just actually have this up, so I will just show you instead. I know, live demo. So here's an example of this book called Middlemarch that's in the Cornell University Library catalog. And there's this link here that says author info. And if you click on the button, it takes you to this page where we have lots of information that's coming in from the library catalog authority information. So that's information that's represented and saved and indexed within the library catalog. But in addition, we're also, the Cornell catalog is also linking out to here DBpedia to get the description. And then this image and these fields that have the asterisks next to them are all coming from Wikidata. So this integrates, some of these fields are coming in from the authority info, some of the surrounding information is coming from the authority information modeled and stored in the library catalog. And the rest is being requested when you go to this page, because we have the ability to go from this authority heading to an id.loc.gov URI, and then that allows us to go into Wikidata and grab the information. If someone's from Cornell's on the line and I've said anything incorrectly, please feel free to correct me. That's how it worked the last time I looked at it. But it definitely is bringing in information from other places. Here's an example. I apologize for switching between slideshow and my screen, but it's sometimes easier just to show the example. This is from a prototype, and again, the slide speaker notes, which I see Jessica putting into the chat, so thank you so much. This is from a presentation we did a long time ago. Various people from Cornell, Stanford, and other institutions worked on a project to look at how we might get information from Wikidata around musical scores specifically. And so this is a prototype. This is not in production, but we were able to use Wikidata to retrieve all of these musical codes, tonality, and instrumentation information. And we did that, I think, using some identifiers that we were able to extract from the catalog and query Wikidata for. So these are both examples of, and they're really both examples of Wikidata, but they're both examples of linked data sources. We're using the identifier as a bridge, grabbing the information, and then using it to decorate or supplement the information already in the library catalog. Any questions before I go? I'm going to launch into the second set of examples. I'm looking at Zoom chat. I admit I'm not looking at the conference Slack, but I will after the presentation is done. So the first set of examples were contextual. Thank you, Jessica. No questions yet. The second set is about using linked data as the mechanism of modeling the information and then having that information within the system that is supporting discovery. So directly modeling it, directly storing it, and having it available, not pulling it on demand, but having it as part of the model that drives discovery. In these situations, one of the real benefits of using an ontology and linked data to support discovery as the main layer is that you can get metadata from multiple different data sources that have their own schemas and models. So the linked data or ontology becomes like a normalization layer. It becomes the main representation layer that is used to find results and to display results. And so some of this work involves mapping all of these different schemas and models to that common ontology of interest. And then if you're not representing the entire model using linked data, there might be part of it that you're doing. And in there, you might be enriching metadata using, again, identifiers that you have that can connect between the content you have and external sources. The questions, again, to consider while trying to do this is what do we want, we as in the designers and implementers of a system using linked data as the main layer, what do we want to represent and make discoverable in the first place? Because it's possible that not everything in these external sources is information we want to show the user or show those connections. We may want to combine information from multiple sources, so there's that. And then again, like in the first case, what kind of discovery experience do we want for users? The interesting question that comes up in many of these systems, I think, that rely on ontologies and on linked data as their main representation layer, is that the way that we model things in an ontology is not necessarily the way that we want the discovery experience to go. Perhaps the ontology is like 6 levels nested, and that's not a page we would want to show the user. Perhaps there are areas where we want to aggregate information from multiple entities or not show the nested hierarchy or relationships. And so I think we think that understanding how users will benefit from this information while not overwhelming them is and giving them a useful and good experience for discovery is very important in a non-trivial task. Some examples here, and I'll say the National Library of Medicine is working on a dataset catalog, and they're using an ontology to capture the pieces of information that they want about datasets. Again, not everything about datasets. In the speaker notes, there's a link to one of the sessions they did for our group like last year. I did go to their website. I think they're about 2 days away from launching a new improved version, so I couldn't get you live screenshots, but that is exciting. So please do check out the National Library of Medicine dataset catalog. The way they addressed, like I said, the question of what information is useful, they realized that having every granular piece of information about data sets from the different places they're retrieving that information was not going to be useful for the user. So instead, they created and set up an ontology or used an ontology that was very specific and mindful about what information they wanted to keep. And then their discovery system relies on that. I actually have these up live, so I'll just show this. I think everybody already knows about Lux, and if you don't, you should definitely check it out. This is the Yale Collections Discovery Portal. They're also using ontologies and linked data as their main mechanism of actually representing the information, and that definitely shows in their interface. But I think the interesting thing to see here is the way that they've made decisions about what information to show based on the type of entity that you're looking at. So if I'm looking at Ray Spoon, the person, you can see works created by and works about. But if I wanted to go to an actual work, um, the layout of what information is included and the description of information changes. It's all using the same graph, but uh, yes. Thank you, Nancy. It's good to see you here. It's by far one of my favorite data catalogs. And then that's an example of Lux, again, making decisions based on type of entity and using those relationships to really fuel the discovery experience. This is Share VDE, and some of you probably already played around with this. It also is dependent on or using linked data and ontologies to represent information. So I believe it's BibFrame plus some extensions. I remember from discussion some years ago, and again, anybody from Share VDE that hears this, please feel free to correct me. The way that we have works instances and items model didn't quite work for users. So what they did is they have works, but they also created this publications category, which is sort of a combination or aggregation of two different levels. And the reason for that is that this makes sense to users who are looking at it more so than perhaps the other hierarchy. Again, that hierarchy is very much in place and those relationships are modeled. The question is, how do we use that information in a way that makes sense to users? Go back to the slideshow. And sorry, I have to read this because I will forget. This is from the North Rhine-Westphalian Library Service Center. This is one of the examples that's covered in the spreadsheet that I talked about that talks about library systems that use linked data for discovery purposes. I included this because this is an interesting example, not of using, as far as I know, linked data throughout the system, but using linked data for a very specific part of the system. There's a Code for Lib article also that talks about what they did. What I understood from my very quick review is that what they're doing is using Wikidata to get place name and geographic information for their place name information that they then represent in the site. So they're enriching what they already have with information from Wikidata. And this is a very focused sort of example, but I think it's worth pointing out that not every representation of linked data needs to be system-wide. Some of it could just be focused on a particular area. This is a prototype screenshot again, from the linked data. And thank you, Jessica, for keeping on top. This is props to Jessica. Many thanks for keeping on top of all these URLs. This is from a linked data for production closing the loop, so LD4P3 prototype, where this is again a Cornell Library catalog example. And what we did here, just very briefly, is we tried to see if we could model relationships between works instances, maybe items, in Sinopia. And then how could we use that information to provide an interface that shows users, oh, I'm looking at this particular copy of Dune. What other copies of Dune are there? Are there translations, adaptations, and sequels, and other related information? So this really goes tries to use those work instance item relationships in a way that fully makes sense to users. And again, this was a prototype that we tried. But I would like people to think about this some more or keep this in mind as we think about where we may go next and as we continue cataloging with these, breaking things out into these clear entities. The last set of examples, which, like I said, is probably requires more work, and again, if you have more examples, please feel free to add these. is around this all of the work that's happening in the large language model and AI space. And a question that we've had in the discovery group, but not just in the discovery group. I think there are other affinity groups thinking about this, art and discovery being one of them, but also in general, I think we're thinking about this with all the interesting possibilities that generative AI, LLMs, conversational agents, et cetera, pick your approach, provide to discovery. Is there some space where linked data, where knowledge graph representation can intersect with that in a meaningful way and useful way? Shout out to Jeremy Nelson's presentation from yesterday, where he talked about converting triples into vector embeddings. So that was an interesting way of taking what is linked data and then converting that into a representation that could then be used to support AI agents. There has been work, not always in the library space, although I think there is an article around archives that might, or work around archives that may have done this, using retrieval augmented generation. Again, in trying to remember what any of this means, I think the way to think about this is the large language models train on, apparently the world's content, and then are able to provide answers to natural language questions. Retrieval augmented generation just means that instead of relying primarily only on the data that was used to train that large language model, at the time of the query, you can go out and grab relevant information from different sources to provide additional context. And part of that additional context or relevant context could be modeled using knowledge graphs. So there is work in this area that's being done by different people, not necessarily always in library catalogs, but I'm not excluding those. And again, those of you who are better at all of this than I am, if I got any of those descriptions or explanations wrong, please feel free to add that in the chat. There also, I think, this isn't exactly discovery in the way that we would think of it, like you would go to a system and then try to find things. But there's also work around trying to make the whole way of querying linked data sources easier. So for instance, using a large language model or conversational agent to say, this is the information I'm interested in finding out. And then that in turn goes and generates the Sparkle query for you. So there's work also being done in that department. And again, there may be many more examples. These are just three that we thought of right now. But there definitely seems to be some potential there. And one of the big questions, I think, for our community, the linked data community, is understanding where that potential lies and how we could use it practically. So all of that, like very long speech making that I did, and I discovery affinity groups, I try not to make the most speech making. I try not to be the one doing most of the talking in the sessions. So I'm very happy when other people have presentations and demos. But in this case, I think hopefully it provides something for all of us to think about as we go into the discussion section. So right before we do that, I think the important, or some of the things we could think about as we think about where we can go next with discovery is, again, the great work that's happening with cataloging and linked data. I think one of the first presentations in the conference was around video disks, and the complexity of relationships that we can now represent using linked data, using BibFrame, et cetera. So now that we are able to not just break things out conceptually differently than we used to, works, instances, and items, we're also able to perhaps define very complex relationships and define equivalences and similar to other sources, or to define similar entities in ways that are different than we used to do before, potentially. With that, and with that kind of the differences in how we are thinking about bibliographic materials or any materials, as we're able to then create these relationships. With that in mind, how do we think representing these relationships might support or streamline discovery tasks? And this is a very big question, and if any one of you has the answer or the gold standard, I think that would be great. But I will say that I don't think we're not asking this question or these questions because we think any one single person has all the answers, but collectively, we should be able to make progress in this as a community at some point. So I'm going to go over to the document, and again, you should all have that. Oh, and thank you very much for filling out the attendees list, those of you that wanted to do that. So in this document, if you're already in there, that's great, but it'd be great if you came in. What we're going to do for the next, we have about a half hour, although we don't have to spend all 30 minutes. If it doesn't work out that way, it's okay. We're going to open it up to now some question and discussion time. And the way we'll do it is we'll do 5 minutes for each question for people to think about, think through. There's three main questions, with the first one being the main one that we've just worked our way up to. So 5 minutes for people to just think about that and then start writing what they'd like, whoever wants to share in this section down here about this question. And then we'll discuss for 5 minutes, and then we'll, let me just go ahead and, oh, okay, Laura, you have it. We'll discuss for 5 minutes and then we'll do the same for the next two questions. So that should put us at around the hour with some time to close. Does anyone have any questions before we start? I can also stop sharing if people don't want to see. I mean, we'll see the document, but if that stresses people out, I'll turn my video off just in case that stresses you out too. So, all right. So everybody, this is the interactive portion. Apologies. It's not as easy as what's your favorite ice cream flavor, but you get into if you want. So 5 minutes, everybody just go ahead and think and type, and then we'll come back and just sort of for 5 minutes discuss the answers and move on to the next questions. Okay, folks are still typing, but please feel free to continue typing, even after the session, because we would love to see your ideas. But feel free to continue typing. I think it would be good to just quickly summarize some of the ideas that are coming up, um, and then walk through, go to, open the floor for any other questions, and then go to the next question. So visualization seems to be a pretty strong contender here as a topic. The idea of a visualized knowledge graph being the successor to virtual shelf browsing. So you can kind of navigate relationships using a visualization of a knowledge graph, and then that supports serendipitous discovery or other visualizations like maps, timelines, and graphs. Um, and Yes, I think there's a mention of the Entity Explorer. I caught only part of that, but that does seem very interesting. So a way to kind of formally or very clearly bring those relationships out, so people can see those and then navigate them and get to interesting information. Um, and then I think this question of will one layer be enough is also intriguing. There's so many different kinds of entities and different queries, and perhaps what we need is build your own query tools. Finding aid collection guides, again, linking them in visual ways with geospatial mapping to allow discoverability in a different type of browsing. So I think, yeah, browsing interfaces, serendipitous discovery, those are all things that are good discussion points and we've thought about in this area. And then I think this notion of just being able to get to the thing that is important to you, like you're anywhere, right? You searched for Shirley Jackson and you search Wikipedia and then you just go to your library page and you figure out what's by Shirley Jackson. So a very like seamless integration of that or transition, allowing people to navigate multiple systems using entities instead of keywords. Um, Resource linking in repositories, making archival materials. So I think there's also there's some topics around, so there's like the visualization, there's maps, there's timelines, there's graphs, but then there's also bullets around specific types of materials. So like audio-visual materials, archival materials, OER. Entity pages are being rolled out in online books that refer to different things. And yes, if you would like to, whoever want to report it to the group. Oh, I figured it was you. I was like, that sounds like John Mark Augerbloom. And it is. Okay. Sorry to out you. Um, I also said this in the chat, but just so it's on recording, I wanted to also give a shout out to Emma Clarkson because I saw your name, and Emma was one of the people who was part of the Vivaldi musical prototyping work, and the larger project around music, not just our part. Does anyone? Laura has a comment. I don't know if anybody can just chime in or not, but it says Laura says, if we can give choice of how to get results at the outset for people in a hurry, we just want to know, do we have this book? But can some relationships be used to group together all the versions of something searched to save their time? Yeah. Versions are an interesting animal in this context. And then collaboration between libraries and cultural institutions like museums. I think I've covered, if I didn't cover your bullet, oh, I think I didn't say this one. It would act as an authoritative launch point for starting research projects. Yeah. So way back in the old days, when we were working on those grants, some of these topics were ones we had, obviously we didn't solve them, but we did work on them. And I think serendipitous discovery came up more than once. Browsing experiences, definitely. I think we gravitate when we think about these relationships and what they can provide us, the fact that we can link across different kinds of information, different sources of information, different institutions. I think we collectively start thinking about, new and interesting visualizations, browsing experiences, something kind of opens up the space quickly and easily. Um, you can just find the thing you want, but then also go beyond that and see what other relationships may be of interest to you. So these are all great. I don't know if, and people are plus oneing and 100%ing in, which is great because now we know what, what appeals to people. Also, John, around the online books page, yeah, we would love to have you back. That's fine. We would like to have the National Library of Medicine back when they've launched as well. All right. So we will now go to the next question, which I think people already started commenting on, which is great. So the next question, we'll do another quick 5 minutes on this. So are there projects or products that you think represent good examples of using linked data for discovery? And if you could tell us a little bit about why, I think that'd be great as well. And then if anybody wants to, put in chat anything else that, they want to point out, that would be great. So maybe since people had already started, let's just do 4 minutes for this. That'll put us around 47 now, since I was still talking. So 4 minutes, just, think about projects or products you think that represent are really great ideas of using linked data for discovery, and then a little bit about, why you think that. I think that'd be great. So let's meet back in 4 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen because I love that some of you are giving like URLs and things. That's awesome. If someone has a Primo example, please feel free to either put it in the notes or in the chat. I can just um, go ahead and show that as well. But it does seem like there's a couple comments about that. Um, it- More information could be included, but some people like how it's bringing in that information. I had not heard of the Rockefeller Center Archives use of PDR Wikidata for the records. Where did but yeah, that looks really interesting. So it seems like, this is the webpage that the person who wrote that link to, and like you can see, this is kind of small. You can see that they're using information from Wikidata to expand the agent info. Uh, Maybe more about this person. I'm assuming it's these, but or maybe also linked in here. But they're including additional information like place of birth, occupation, position, and then linking to additional records like VIAF and everything like that. Yeah, I think, they're normally called hubs, but there are some linked data sources, Wikidata among them and I think perhaps VIAF too, that are really useful as ways to show you even other, identifiers, other data sources where that related information exists. So that's always good. Yale's cross-collection knowledge graph example. This is Lake Michigan. I assume what this means that these examples are coming from across different collections. They just happen to be all about Lake Michigan. Um, there's a lot of those. Um, and then ShareBDs developed into an interesting entity-based interface. Um, Music Brains, while at Cornell, we were working as part of the LD4P3 stuff, a grant. We worked with Discogs, which was a favorite for catalogers, and it's not RDF, necessarily from the source, but it is really useful information. So once that connection's made, you can bring that up. So yeah, Music Brains is a great way of just being able to bring in that information and see that represented. Yes, Discogs is awesome indeed. Um, Linked Jazz Network, our old friend Link Jazz. Um, oh, they have little. I hadn't seen this before. This is new. Did the recording stop? That's weird, but it's back, so we're good. Um, just in time to play some Clark Terry. But yeah, this is just, I think, looking at these connections and then being able to kind of go through it. And then there's ways of scaling this graph back and forth. And I don't know what these do, but I'm sure they're awesome. Want to reduce duplication of efforts by capturing data in too many repositories. This is, in fact, no problem, Jessica. Thank you. This is, in fact, one of the plus points of this, right? Is that instead of recreating data in multiple places, we are able to um, leverage what exists out there. And I use the word leverage, and I don't like the word leverage because it means nothing, but use the word, the other content out there. Um, Nathan has done a lot of work in Discogs. Good, good work. Okay, so I think unless people have anything to add there, I think we're good to just spend a few minutes on this last question. People have already started writing, so let's just do 4 minutes, and then that'll give us 5 minutes to just sort of wrap up. This last question is obviously a little selfish, because we want to know what people want to talk about and what they might be interested in presenting on or attending or participating with. So 4 minutes, and then on this question, the question is, which important projects or areas of exploration would you like us to cover as part of the Discovery Affinity Group? What resonates with you? What do you think is a really important pathway for people to take? And then that could be a topic that we could talk about. All right, so we'll be back in 4 minutes. Okay, these are some great ideas and questions. Um, I think for the first one, and there's a comment by Nathan on this as well. And please feel free to continue writing. Linking academic libraries and public libraries collections that share content, if we could all kind of work together. I think this is a really interesting idea, and if whoever wrote that or whoever has ideas about that would reach out to us, we can try and figure out what kind of session, that might be. How do we talk about this? Who do we bring in? This is one of the questions we have as the Affinity Group is who best do we like reach out to and talk to about that? Figuring out how to, and so the comment that Nathan had on, I think it was on this, but I'm not sure it was on maybe this one. Figuring out how to incorporate commercial electronic resource metadata into the data discovery. Um, yeah, I know a little bit about e-resources, but not enough to answer that or discuss it. So I think again, if you have thoughts or ideas about that, I think we would love to hear more about that and open that up. Emily, okay, all right, yeah. Feel free to reach out to us on Slack and maybe we can, what are the parameters for this discussion and who do we bring in to talk to about that? Or what even is the problem that we're trying to solve here, I think would be great. And then the killer app of these systems is on the back end for me. I fantasized about someone asking us to put an open access version of a journal paper in our institutional repository and just clicking a button to migrate all the relevant data. So I think there is some AI related work around that where, if I'm understanding this correctly, where you can kind of grab information from what's out there and bring it in. But I think what you're talking about is using ontologies and reasoners to do reconciliation instead of like doing like a messy crosswalk. Um, I think I think that is a really interesting idea for how we would combine some sort of link data and AI technology stuff because I think this problem space is also one that machine learning approaches are trying to address. If you have this information already, you can just pull it in. Using DOI to pull in data from Crossref, which ideally includes ROR identifiers. No AI. This is about an ROR, yeah. Um, Building linked data discovery system for a small medium collection. I'm going to skip this because I'm going to come to this in just a second because this is a really great question. Creating discovery opportunities around identity-based categories that don't require harmful description practices. I think, thank you, Wendy. I think that, and you have a 2-minute warning, so I'll wrap it up in a minute, but uh, I probably forgot to say this, but I think that was part of the comment that we made about if you're going to bring in information from other data sources, make sure that you are thinking about when you don't want to display things. And this could be part of it where the external data source just has stuff that is possibly harmful. So you don't want to bring that in. If I understood that correctly, and if I didn't, please feel free to leave a comment on that. OCLC's visualization of linked data, funding and buy-in from library upper management seems like a perennial question. So I think that is a really good discussion topic. And we have to figure out how to frame that again. And then LRM RDA relationships and the user tasks they could enable. But do we have the data for them? Yeah. So going back to this last question, which I think is a great question, repositories are also working with linked entities to enhance discovery. But this last question of how do I know if this is a problem that should be solved with linked data is a great question. And I don't know that I have the answer for that. I think if you have a situation where you have multiple data sources with different schemas, then a way to represent that in a normalized way is a useful thing. If you have lots of relationships, if you find yourself always going to Wikidata to get the information you want, like those seem like, possible ones. But other than that, yeah, I think that's a great question in general, and I wish we had more than 2 minutes to go over it, but I did want to highlight that. So since we're pretty much at time, I just wanted to end with, again, a big thank you to everybody for participating and joining. Like I said, our GitHub is here. We're on LD4, the Slack channel for discovery. So please feel free to follow up with us. We will be coming back, I think, late August and starting our programming again. So we're looking for new ideas. So we will definitely try to look at those ideas that you shared. And again, thank you very much. And bye.